Discover the best AI tools to save your company hundreds of thousands of dollars with AI. So in today's episode, we have Hunter Jensen, and he's the founder and CEO of Barefoot Solutions, a leading digital technology firm specializing in AI, data science, and application development. So, Hunter, please tell us, how can entrepreneurs leverage the best AI tools to save their company hundreds of thousands of dollars?
AI Superwoman podcast with Patrascu shares the world's most innovative AI tools and processes to go from technophobe to AI pro, attract leads, close sales, automate your business, enhance productivity, and deploy AI agents to do your work.
Right now, this is such a new space. And at the same time, we've been doing AI work for 30 years. But what has changed was the launch of ChatGPT in November of 2022, which kind of opened the eyes of the world to what I've known and many in the industry have known this technology is capable of for many years. When I talk to business owners and CEOs and other C-level executives, which I do a lot of speaking on this topic, there are three main areas where I recommend that they focus now because the tech is ready now. There are a lot of areas where the tech is aspirational, but not quite there yet. And, my focus when I talk to business leaders and work with clients is always around getting a return on your investment. Too many companies right now are treating this as like a toy. It's neat, it's interesting, and they do proof of concepts and they do, little side projects to help with a specific task or this and that. But most of the time, those things don't end up being deployed organization-wide, like in a production environment, to drive significant returns on investment, which it should, and it's ready for that if applied the right way and using the right tools. So there's three main areas where I like to guide clients and others when looking at AI initiatives. One, and this is the obvious one, is sales and marketing. There's so much that can be done in the sales and marketing side of things with generative AI, right? With large language models and with diffusion models, which are the ones that create, imagery and visual content. Right now, and by the time this airs, I might have a different opinion, but as of today, I would stay away from video. It's just not very good yet in terms of creating video content with AI, but images and text content is absolutely there. So if you're not using AI to generate very personalized outbound, B2B sales emails, for example, or generating, consumer-facing content for your website, for white papers, all the rest of it, you're already behind because the leaders in the space are doing that today. They've been doing it for a year or two, or even more in some cases. And so, that's an area where, you need to get with your team and make sure that they're using the best tools out there to help them generate content. Now, let's be clear, in this arena, this is not necessarily replacing your sales and marketing people. This is making them, giving them superpowers, basically. It's enabling folks on that team to do 100 times more than what they used to be able to do in a given day because of how incredibly powerful these tools are. So, when you talk about large language models and text generation, ChatGPT is the obvious go-to choice. They are still the leader. It is an arms race, but they continually put out new models on a regular basis that beat everybody else. And when it comes to sales and marketing content, you don't have some of the concerns in other areas around like security and data privacy and things like that, because it's more of like outreach content. So you can be a little bit riskier in terms of using these things, but they always need what's called a human in the loop. They need a human to refine, to guide, to prompt, and to kind of finish the sort of content that is being generated by a large language model or a diffusion model. So that's a really easy way to dip your toes in to the space. So another area that's, again, low-hanging fruit, very practical, and we've seen this across a lot of different businesses, would be customer support chatbots. That technology is ready to go, ready to deploy. You do not have to build something custom. You can use various off-the-shelf platforms to be able to provide either sales support or, in some cases, customer support. And then there's also internal chatbots, which I've seen actually more interest in and more activity on internal chatbots than I have on external facing ones. And the reason being, you hear these stories about companies getting sued, and this airline that misled a customer, had a chatbot mislead a customer about their bereavement airfare policy and got taken to court over it and lost that court case. And so a lot of business leaders are nervous about hallucinating chatbots speaking to customers or potential customers, which is rightfully so, because they do still hallucinate quite a bit. But the internal chatbots, to me, are actually a little bit more interesting. So I'll give you an example. Training a chatbot on all of your HR policies and procedures and benefits and all of that. When an employee goes to Sally from HR and wants to know if their dental plan covers Invisalign, that takes like hours for her to figure out, pouring through all of these documents to get the appropriate answer. And it doesn't need to be that way anymore. A chatbot could absolutely do that job and that's very low risk, because a hallucinating chatbot to an internal employee who has been warned that it may hallucinate and they need to follow up to, confirm certain things, that's a lot less dangerous than an external potential customer or an existing customer. So that's a great major cost saving way to implement AI that's low risk, which is an HR chatbot, plain and simple. Could reduce the size of your HR team, reduce your salary costs very significantly if you were to focus in that area. Another area that I think is important to look at for companies, and this one is a little more kind of esoteric than some of the others, but I like to pose CEOs with a very specific question. And that question is, what would it be valuable to predict? What could you make money on if you could predict something accurately? And do you have the historical data of that thing? Now, I'll give you a very practical example. I was talking to a photographer, a CEO of a fine art. So he has several fine art galleries. He's been on Surfer magazine cover more than any photographer in the history of the magazine. And I posed that question, and he raised his hand and he said, well, I take millions of photos every year, but I only produce like 20 of them in a given year and sell them. And I have no system for choosing which ones I produce other than my gut. And I have no way of predicting which ones will be commercially successful that I'll sell a lot of copies of. Is there a way to predict which ones might be successful? And the answer was yes, there is, because he has historical data. He's been doing this for 20 years. And he's got all of his sales data. He's got all of his raw photos. He's got all of the photos that he produced, and he knows how well they did commercially. And, using deep learning and reinforcement learning and neural networks and more generally just machine learning, we can predict from those raw photos which ones will be commercially successful. And that's yielded millions of dollars, just that one concept alone. Now, that's specific to a photographer, but again, what would it be valuable if you could predict it? Because if you have the historical data, chances are these neural networks will allow you to predict that. And then the final area, which is a little boring, but not when you start thinking about your bottom line, it's not, is document management. So there are tons of legacy traditional businesses out there right now that employ a lot of humans to push paper, read documents, copy paste into other documents, collate, generate new documents, all the rest of it. What has changed with large language models is that the machines can understand documents now. You can just upload it into a RAG database and ask it a question about it, and it will give you an accurate answer almost always, given the proper prompting and kind of guardrails and all the rest of it. And so you don't need the humans to do that job anymore. You need someone to oversee it, certainly, and to make sure that things look accurate and there aren't, errors and that kind of thing. But they don't need to do the large majority of that work. Like as an example, escrow companies. Most of the work of escrow companies is receiving documents, titles and insurance coverage and inspection reports and all the rest of it, and then collating that all together and then sending that to the appropriate people and approving the appropriate financing when they receive the funds and all the rest. And it takes a team of people to do that work, and it just doesn't need to anymore because machines and properly written prompts and code can handle all of that now. And so when you want to talk about, saving costs, we worked with an escrow company that I think the estimation was something like $200,000 or $300,000 per year. And this is not even a large escrow company that they were going to save deploying this system of managing their documents in a way that they previously had humans do. And so that's another, like I said, it's not sexy, but man, you can save a lot of money if you use this stuff right. So that was a mouthful. I'll stop there. But those are a few of the areas where there's massive opportunities to increase productivity and save on costs using tools that are out there right now, and they're ready. They're ready for prime time.
Thank you. Tell us some AI tools that can be leveraged for a property investing company to potentially reduce their operational costs. What kind of tools do you think they could use, and for what kind of tasks?
So a property investing company. So a lot of what they do is research. And large language models are great at research. Now, they also have a lot of proprietary information. And, one of the really common threads I've been seeing in the last, we'll call it 9 months, is concern about uploading proprietary information into large language models like ChatGPT, and rightfully so. You do not know, despite what they may promise, you don't know what they're actually doing with that data or where it might surface. So what I've been seeing a lot of lately, and we've been building systems like this, is building in-house, private, secure implementations of large language models and or agents. And so one of the tools that we like a lot and we've been using for a good while now and will continue to is Llama. Llama is Meta's large language model. It performs similarly to ChatGPT. It's probably normally a little bit behind. It doesn't have the image generation like integration that ChatGPT does with DALL-E. But the reason that Llama matters and is such a useful tool is that it's open source. What that means is you can download it and you can put it on your private cloud server or on-premise or wherever you want it, and it will not send your data outside of those walls. So if you want to be able to upload, for example, proprietary documents or connect it to a database or any of those things, and then be able to ask questions about that data, then Llama is a fantastic choice for something like that. When you combine Llama with a tool like Pinecone, which is a RAG database, retrieval augmented generation database, or just a vector database, they call it. You can upload any sort of PowerPoint presentation or PDF or Word doc or whatever you want into this vector database, and then connect it to your Llama model, and then ask questions about what's in there, and get really, really excellent, well thought out answers. And so, if you're looking at property, investing in commercial properties, for example, and you might have 20 that you're looking at, the analysis there is tremendous. The amount of work that goes into deciding, which properties you might be interested in investing in requires an analyst to do like hundreds of hours of work and spreadsheets and documents and all the rest of it. And you don't need to anymore. The tools have gotten so good, they can do the work of a mid-level to senior analyst in a fraction of the time at a fraction of the cost to make extremely well-informed decisions on, what investments that you might want to make. So those are a couple of the tools that I really like. Llama as an open source large language model, Pinecone as a RAG database. Another one of the tools that I'm watching very closely is 11 Labs. They just announced a huge new round of funding, not huge, I guess in relative terms, but I think it was like 40 million or something like that, but with a very, very high valuation. And they have just absolutely nailed voice conversations. And so there's a foundational large language model at the core of it, and you can choose which one you want to use in most cases. But having like natural sounding voice conversations using 11 Labs has been tremendous. We're rolling out a housing crisis hotline that currently employs 15 agents to, answer phone calls for these hotlines. And they're open 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. And that means that hotline is not available after 7 o'clock or on the weekends. And people need help at those times. And so rolling out a conversational, 11 Labs style chatbot with another great tool to look at is Thoughtly, thought.ly, who helps like with the call portion of this and the training of the bot, is enabling this hotline to be open 24/7. Like how many lives are saved, or if not saved, are greatly improved and helped by having this hotline open 24/7. It's one organization in one metro area, and it's still tens of thousands of people. Imagine, a year from now when this is rolled out across nonprofits and NGOs and government funded organizations across the country and across the globe, the number of people it can help will be tremendous. So those are a few of the tools I like. I like Llama, I like 11 Labs, I like Thoughtly, I like Pinecone. Those are all tools that can be used today. They are ready today in a way that some aren't, to really improve efficiency, reduce cost, drive revenue, and push your business forward.
Thank you. What about contracts? Is there anything that can systemize or make faster the creation of contracts?
Not yet, actually, is the answer. So what? And we actually have we're working with a law firm as a client right now on this exact matter, and so I'm pretty knowledgeable. And what we found is that off-the-shelf solutions in this space just are not good enough yet. Now, what you can use and do is similar to what I already described, which is spin up your internal large language model like Llama, and spin up a vector database like Pinecone, upload your proprietary information in it, and get a lot of help writing a contract. It can do 90% of the work if you do something like that. But then you definitely still need an attorney at the end of the day, because some wild stuff can show up in there if you're not having these things reviewed by someone with a law degree that's passed the bar. Will that be different a year or two from now? I think so. I think it's actually pretty close. But right now, I do not, and nor will any reputable law firm trust an LLM to output a great agreement, but they can get you 90% of the way there.
Thank you. What about if you already have the contract and you just need it to be customized for a particular client? Is there any way to use AI to do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a similar use case that I've seen being used is actually reviewing contracts as well, right? I'll give you a personal example. I sign a lot of non-disclosure agreements. I probably sign 3 or 4 non-disclosure agreements a week because we're typically dealing with confidential client information. And there's a couple of clauses that every once in a while show up in an NDA that I won't sign. But these things, they're 5, 6, 7 pages, and it gets time consuming to make sure that these 2 clauses that I don't like aren't in there. And so I today use a large language model to ask, hey, is there any non-compete language in this NDA? And it has never gotten that wrong. And I'll follow up and say, and if it says yes, I'll say, oh, okay, can you show me where? And it's been 100% success rate so far. And so the ability to, as an example, like you mentioned, alter a contract, also very simple. Saying something like, I don't like clause 4, I need it to include an extra term for this. Can you please rewrite clause 4 with this particular term? It will do a great job of that. It will be very successful in a task like that. Now, if you tried to ask it to rewrite the entire contract, given a set of new terms, I would not trust that today. That's kind of where the line is. It's like being very precise and very specific. You can get amazing outcomes from these things. But when you try to be very broad and like more general, that's when you start to get the weirdness and the hallucinations and the other problems that you have with these LLMs. So the key is try to be narrow and precise and be very detailed in your prompting, and you can get just absolutely fantastic results.
Thank you. Are there any AI tools that can be used for inbound and outbound calls? You did mention, I think, Thoughtly for that. Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, Thoughtly is a great tool for that. Kind of a trend that I'm seeing in the industry is like a bunch of the legacy players are trying to introduce AI, but what they're doing is like bolting it on to their kind of existing data model and their existing infrastructure and kind of the way things already work. And I'll give you an example. This is a traditional kind of telecommunications company. They have call center software, right? And the way that old call center software works is you make basically like a decision tree, which all of us are familiar with and all of us hate. Right? Press 1 for this and 2 for that. And then, okay, you press 2. So now press 1 for this and 3 for that, and so on and so on. And it goes through a menu that you've created as the manager of this particular. And so when that software went to implement AI, they said, okay, well, let's make it easier to create the decision tree, the phone tree, which is the absolute wrong approach. It needs to be rethought from the ground up, which is let's use machine learning and large language models to train these things to handle any scenario, not just the 1s and the 2s and the 3s that we can come up with, because people that call in are a lot more dynamic than that. And so training it, like as an example, on past call logs that you've been doing for years to handle all sorts of different scenarios is a far better approach. And that's why I like something like Thoughtly much more than kind of what I would call the old school, the old guard of, telecom platforms that are like trying to bolt on AI to their kind of existing concepts.
Thank you so much. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty engaged there. You can also find me at barefootsolutions.com. And if you want to chat about AI or tech or any of it, I love to have conversations with new people about that stuff. So hit me up and I will take that meeting, regardless of what it's about, as long as it's something I know something about, because I really do enjoy that kind of thing.
Thank you. Can I ask you about Thoughtly? Are they able to handle sales calls, or is it just a matter of like booking with an agent, or booking into the calendar of an agent?
So they're getting, I would say. The research that I've done was much more around the inbound calls versus outbound sales. There are others that are really focused on outbound sales calls. I think one of them is one of the ones that I've seen in practice and successful is Calendar with a K, Calendar AI. And so I would say when looking at tools, really, if outbound sales is your what you're looking to do, then really make sure that they're focused on that versus a broader variety of use cases. The other that I've seen working is Heygen, Heygen, and they do like digital avatars, kind of realistic looking people having like videoed chats and that kind of thing. But they're very far along as well. So that would be another one to look at.
Follow me for more AI productivity tools.